Before we begin, if you're enjoying these stories from law enforcement, please take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow, and I'm curious, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. Now, let's get into tonight's story about a Louisiana State Trooper and the passenger who changed everything. My name is Detective Bridget Landry, but back in 2004, I was just Trooper Landry, working the night shift on Louisiana's back highways. What I'm about to tell you happened over 18 nights, and by the end of it, I wasn't sure if I was losing my mind or if something impossible had found me on those dark Louisiana roads. It started on September 3rd, 2004. I'd been a trooper for 3 years, mostly working the stretch of Highway 90 between New Iberia and Morgan City. It's lonely country out there, especially at night. Sugarcane fields stretching into darkness, the occasional gas station throwing weak light against the humid air, and the constant presence of the bayou, lurking just beyond the road's edge like something alive and patient. I was 2 hours into my shift when I saw her. She was standing on the shoulder of the highway near mile marker 47, just outside the glow of my headlights. No car nearby, no broken-down vehicle, nothing to explain why anyone would be out there in the middle of nowhere at midnight. I slowed down, activating my spotlight. She was young, maybe early 20s, wearing a white sundress that seemed to glow in my lights. Her dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, and she stood perfectly still, not waving for help, not moving at all. Just standing there facing the road. I pulled over about 20 feet ahead of her and grabbed my flashlight. As I approached, she still hadn't moved. The humidity wrapped around me like a wet blanket, and I could hear the chorus of insects and frogs from the swamp. "Ma'am, you okay? You need some help?" She turned to look at me, and I got my first good look at her face. She was pretty in a way that seemed almost old-fashioned, like a photograph from the 1950s. But her eyes were what caught me. Dark, intense, and completely focused on me with an expression I couldn't read. She didn't say anything, just raised her right arm and pointed down the highway in the direction I'd been traveling. "Ma'am, I need you to speak to me." "Are you in some kind of trouble? Do you need medical attention?" Nothing. She just kept pointing, her arm extended, her face expressionless. I tried a few more times to get her to talk, to tell me her name, to explain what she was doing out there. Each time, she just stared at me and pointed. No fear, no confusion, no emotion at all. Just that steady pointing gesture. Finally, I made a decision. "Okay, look, I'm going to take you to the hospital in Morgan City, get you checked out. Come on." I led her to my patrol car and put her in the back seat. She came without resistance, moving smoothly, almost gliding. As I shut the door, she was still pointing, now at the windshield, indicating the direction we needed to go. I radioed dispatch. "Unit 14 to dispatch, I've got a possible 1055, female, early 20s, non-responsive. Transporting to Lakewood Medical." "Copy that, Unit 14. Need backup?" "Negative. She's compliant, just not talking." I started driving, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds. She sat perfectly still in the back seat, arm still extended, still pointing forward. It was unnerving, but I'd dealt with stranger things. Drug users, people in shock, mental health crises. This probably fell into one of those categories. About 10 miles down the road, near mile marker 57, I saw the lights. A car was pulled over on the shoulder, hazards blinking. As I got closer, I could see it was a sedan with the hood up. I almost drove past, focused on getting my passenger to the hospital, but something made me slow down. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The woman in the back seat had lowered her arm. She was looking directly at me now, and for just a second I could have sworn she nodded. I pulled over behind the sedan and called it in. Dispatch, Unit 14, I've got a 1043 at mile marker 57, checking on a disabled vehicle. As I approached the sedan, an older man emerged from the driver's side, looking relieved to see me. Officer, thank God. I think I've got a fuel line problem, won't start. You have a phone, sir? Call for a tow? Dead battery. I was about to start walking to find help. I helped him call for a tow truck and waited with him until it arrived. The whole time, I kept glancing back at my patrol car. The woman sat motionless in the back seat, her silhouette visible in the dome light I'd left on. After the man was taken care of, I got back on the road. In my mirror, the woman had resumed her position, arm extended, pointing forward. When I finally got to the hospital, she came without resistance, but the moment we stepped through the emergency room doors, she spoke for the first time. Tomorrow night, mile marker 52 inches. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Old Louisiana, maybe, or something French. What? What happens tomorrow night? But she was already walking away, moving past the triage desk, past the surprised nurses, heading for the exit. I started after her, but a nurse grabbed my arm. Officer, do you have paperwork for this patient? By the time I looked back, the woman was gone. I ran outside, but the parking lot was empty. No woman in white, no sound of footsteps, nothing. I filed a report describing her as best I could, but without a name or any identifying information, there wasn't much to go on. The whole thing felt wrong, like I'd missed something important, but I couldn't figure out what. The next night, September 4th, I was back on patrol. I told myself I wouldn't think about the woman, that she was probably some local having a breakdown, that I'd never see her again. At 11:47 p.m., I passed mile marker 47. She was standing there again. Same spot, same white dress, same posture, like she'd never left, like she'd been waiting for me all day. This time, I didn't hesitate. I pulled over, approached her, and she did exactly what she'd done the night before. Turned to me, raised her arm, and pointed down the highway. Okay, listen, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to tell me who you are and what you want. I can't help you if you don't talk to me. She just kept pointing. Fine. Get in the car. Same routine. She got in without resistance, sat in perfect stillness, pointed forward. I drove, checking my mirror constantly, trying to figure out what I was dealing with. At mile marker 52, exactly where she'd told me the night before, I found it. A pickup truck was on its side in the ditch, smoke coming from under the hood. A man was trapped inside, conscious but unable to get out. If I hadn't stopped right then, if I'd driven past even 30 seconds later, he might have burned to death when the engine caught fire. I got him out, called for an ambulance and fire department. As the paramedics loaded him into the ambulance, he grabbed my hand. How did you know to stop? I only went off the road 5 minutes ago. How did you know? I didn't have an answer. When I got back to my patrol car, the woman was gone. The back door was still closed, still locked from the outside. But she'd vanished. On the dashboard, written in the condensation on the inside of my windshield, were the words, Tomorrow night. Mile marker 63 inches, night 3, September 5th. I didn't tell anyone about what was happening. How could I? A mysterious woman who appeared and disappeared, who somehow knew where emergencies would happen before they occurred. They'd think I was having a breakdown, pull me off patrol, maybe push me toward early retirement. But I couldn't stay away. I had to know what this was, what she was. At 11:30 p.m., I drove to mile marker 47. She was there, waiting. Same dress, same posture, same silence. When she got in my car and pointed forward, I tried something different. "Who are you?" She didn't respond. "Are you real? Are you a ghost? Are you something else?" Nothing. "Why me? Why are you showing me these things?" For a moment, just a moment, she lowered her arm and looked directly at me in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were sad, infinitely sad, and when she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Because you'll listen. Because you'll understand. Not yet, but soon." Then she resumed pointing. At mile marker 63, I found a woman having a seizure in her car, convulsing behind the wheel. I got her out, kept her airway clear, called for help. The paramedic said if she'd been alone for another few minutes, she might not have made it. The pattern continued. Night 4, September 6th, mile marker 47. The woman appeared. Mile marker 71, I found 2 teenagers who'd overdosed on pills, passed out in a parked car with the engine running. Carbon monoxide would have killed them. Night 5, September 7th. Mile marker 47. She was waiting. Mile marker 58. A motorcyclist had crashed in the dark, internal bleeding, couldn't move. I found him just in time. Night 6, September 8th. Mile marker 47, same routine. Mile marker 69, an elderly man having a heart attack, clutching his chest in his truck, phone dead. I called it in. Started CPR, he survived. Night 7, September 9th. Mile marker 47. She appeared like clockwork. Mile marker 54. A domestic violence situation. A woman running from a house. Her husband drunk and violent behind her. I got there just as he was coming after her with a weapon. I stopped it. 7 nights. 7 saves. 7 times I was in exactly the right place at exactly the right time because a woman in a white dress pointed me there. I started researching between shifts. I went through old police records, missing persons reports, anything that might explain who she was. I found plenty of stories about Highway 90, about ghost sightings and strange occurrences, but nothing that matched my passenger. On night 8, September 10th, I arrived at mile marker 47 with questions prepared. But this time, something was different. She was crying. Silent tears ran down her face, but her expression remained neutral, detached. She pointed as always, but now her hand was trembling. "What's wrong?" I asked, but she didn't answer. She got in the car, pointed forward, and we drove. At mile marker 61, I found a house fire. A family of 4 trapped inside, flames already consuming the first floor. I called it in, but the fire department was 20 minutes away. With the help of a neighbor, I got everyone out just before the staircase collapsed. When I got back to my car, the woman was sitting in the back seat, no longer crying. She was looking at me with an expression I finally recognized. Gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "You're the one who led me there. For listening. For believing. For not looking away. I still don't understand." "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" "Tomorrow night," she said. "Mile marker 47. I'll show you." And then, as always, she was gone. On night 9, I was terrified. Something was building towards something, some revelation I wasn't sure I wanted to face, but I couldn't stop. I had to see it through. When I arrived at mile marker 47 on September 11th, she wasn't alone. There were 3 of them now. The woman in white and 2 others. A man in work clothes covered in what looked like oil or grease, and a young girl, maybe 16, in a cheerleading uniform. All 3 stood in a line on the shoulder. All 3 raised their arms at the same time. All 3 pointed down the highway. I felt my heart racing as I pulled over. This was bigger than I thought. This was something I didn't understand at all. When I opened the back door of my patrol car, all three got in, sitting shoulder to shoulder, arms extended, pointing forward in perfect synchronization. I drove. I didn't know what else to do. At mile marker 48, barely a mile down the road, I found the accident. A semi-truck had jackknifed, blocking both lanes. The driver was slumped over the wheel, unconscious. But that wasn't the worst of it. Behind the truck, unable to stop in time, 3 cars had piled up. In those cars were the 3 passengers in my back seat. The woman in white, trapped behind her steering wheel, chest crushed, gasping for air. The man in work clothes, thrown through his windshield, lying on the pavement. The teenage girl, half out of her crumpled sedan, cheerleading uniform soaked with blood. They were dying, all 3 of them, dying right in front of me. I called for every emergency service in the parish. Ambulances, fire department, helicopter medical transport. But even as I did, I knew the truth. I was too late. For them, I was too late. I went to the woman in white first, the one who'd been guiding me for 9 nights. She looked up at me with those dark, intense eyes and she smiled. "Now you understand," she whispered. "This is night 9. There are 9 more to come, 9 more nights to prepare." Prepare for what? Night 18, mile marker 47. That's when it happens. What happens? Tell me. But she was fading, her image becoming translucent. Through her, I could see the chaos of the accident scene. Paramedics arriving, fire trucks spraying foam. "Your crime scene," she said. "On night 18, it's your crime scene." Then all 3 of them were gone. In the back seat of my patrol car, in the wreckage of their vehicles, vanished like they'd never been there at all. But the accident was still there. The semi, the pileup, everything except the 3 people I'd just watched die. The truck driver survived. His talk screen came back clean. He'd had a heart attack at the wheel, lost control. Just bad luck, they said. Just one of those things that happens on dark highways in Louisiana. But I knew better. I'd seen the victims before they died. I'd ridden with their ghosts. And now they were warning me. Night 18 was coming. In 9 more nights, something was going to happen at mile marker 47. Something involving me. My crime scene, she'd said. Was I going to die there? Was I supposed to stop something from happening? I didn't know, and that terrified me more than anything. For the next 7 nights I continued my patrol, but the woman didn't appear at mile marker 47. The pattern had broken. Instead, I started seeing others. Different people, different ghosts, all standing on the shoulder at various mile markers, all pointing to emergencies I could prevent. An old woman in a house dress pointing to a gas leak that would have exploded. A construction worker pointing to a bridge with a failing support about to collapse. A priest in full vestments pointing to a car thief who'd just stolen a vehicle with a sleeping child in the back seat. I saved them all, every single one. 17 saves in 17 nights, guided by the dead, by people who died on Highway 90 and somehow found a way to reach back, to warn, to help. But all of it was leading to night 18. All of it was building toward whatever was waiting for me at mile marker 47. On September 20th, 2004, I started my shift with my will updated, my affairs in order, and a letter to my sister explaining as much as I could about what had been happening. I sealed it and left it in my locker at the station. If I didn't come back, at least someone would know the truth. At 11:30 p.m., I drove to mile marker 47. She was there, waiting. The woman in white, alone again, standing in her usual spot. But this time she wasn't pointing forward. She was pointing at me. She was pointing at me, not down the highway, not toward some distant emergency. Her arm was extended, finger aimed directly at my chest, and her expression had changed. No longer neutral, no longer distant. She looked terrified. I got out of my patrol car slowly, every instinct telling me to get back in and drive away. But I'd come this far. 17 nights of following where she led. 17 lives saved because I'd trusted her. I couldn't turn back now. "What happens tonight?" I called out. "What am I supposed to see?" She lowered her arm and took a step toward me, then another. As she moved closer, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Her white dress had a dark stain on it, right over her heart. In the glow of my headlights, it looked almost black, but I knew what it was. Blood. Old blood. Dried and set into the fabric decades ago. When she was about 10 feet away, she stopped and spoke, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "My name is Marie Thibodeau. I died here on September 20th, 1953, at 11:43 p.m. I was 22 years old. I was murdered by a man who flagged me down, pretending to need help. I was a nurse, driving home from a late shift. I stopped because that's what you do in Louisiana. You help people." My blood ran cold. September 20th. Today's date, exactly 51 years ago. "The man who killed me was never caught," she continued. "He killed 7 others before he died himself, old and comfortable in his bed, never paying for what he'd done. But before he died, he bragged about it to his son, told him all the details. How he'd flag down women on lonely highways, how he'd pretend to be stranded, how he'd kill them and leave them in the bayou. Why are you telling me this? Because his grandson is doing the same thing. Tonight, right now, and you're his target." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Look at your radio," Marie said. I ran to my patrol car. The radio was crackling with static, but underneath it I could hear a voice. "Dispatch trying to reach me. Unit 14, respond, disabled vehicle, mile marker, backup en route." The signal was breaking up, distorted, like something was interfering with it. I grabbed the handset, but when I tried to respond, nothing happened. The radio was dead. I checked my cell phone, no signal. Not unusual out here, but the timing was too perfect. Marie was beside my car now, her face close to the window. "He's been watching you, watching the highway patrol patterns. He knows you work alone out here. He knows you're a woman, that you'll be sympathetic to someone who needs help, and he's set up a trap 3 miles ahead. A car made to look disabled, him pretending to be stranded. How do you know all this? Because I've been watching too. I watch this highway every night, watching for him. His grandfather killed me here. His father knew and did nothing. Now the grandson has inherited the same sickness, the same hunger. And tonight, the 51st anniversary of my death, he's chosen you." I looked down the dark highway. 3 miles ahead, somewhere past mile marker 50, a killer was waiting, setting up the same trap that had killed Marie half a century ago. I can call for backup, wait for, "Your radio doesn't work. He's using a jammer. By the time backup realizes you're out of contact and comes looking, it'll be too late. And he knows these back roads better than anyone. He'll disappear into the bayou, and you'll just be another unsolved case on Highway 90. Then what do I do?" Marie smiled sadly. "You do what I couldn't. You survive, you fight, and you stop him before he kills again. I don't understand. Why did you show me all those other people? The 17 saves? Because I needed you to trust me. I needed you to believe that when I pointed you towards something, it was real. And I needed you to know that you could save people, that you were good at it, so that tonight, when it mattered most, you'd be ready." She reached through the window, her hand passing through the glass like it wasn't there, and touched my shoulder. I felt a coldness spread through me, but also something else. Certainty. Strength. He's waiting at mile marker 50. Blue pickup truck, hood up, emergency lights flashing. He'll approach your window with a friendly smile, asking for help. When you lean down to listen, he'll spray something in your face. Sedative. You'll have about 3 seconds to react before you lose consciousness. How do you know his plan? Because it's the same plan his grandfather used. The same plan that killed me. I took a deep breath, trying to think like a cop, not like someone terrified out of her mind. Okay, I need to approach this tactically. If I know what he's going to do, I have an advantage. You have more than that. Marie stepped back from the car. You have us. The highway around us suddenly filled with light, but not from any physical source. Dozens of figures materialized on the shoulder, glowing faintly in the darkness. Men, women, children. All ages, all dressed in styles from different decades, all standing along Highway 90, marking spots where they'd died. Everyone he killed, everyone his grandfather killed, we're all here. We've been waiting for this night, for someone who could stop him. You're that person, Bridget. You're the one who listened. I looked at all those spirits, all those lives cut short on this stretch of highway, and I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about justice, about stopping a cycle of violence that had continued for 51 years. Tell me everything, I said, every detail about what he's going to do. Marie told me. We went over it 3 times, rehearsing, preparing. When I finally put the car in drive and headed toward mile marker 50, I knew exactly what was coming. The blue pickup truck was exactly where she said it would be. Hood up, emergency lights flashing, pulled over on the shoulder. As I approached, I could see a figure standing beside it, waving at me with what looked like relief. I pulled over 20 feet behind the truck, positioning my car for a quick exit if needed. Before I got out, I checked my weapon, made sure my baton was accessible, and took 3 deep breaths. The man approaching looked normal, mid-30s, work clothes, friendly smile. Nothing about him screamed danger. That was the point. That's how predators worked. "Evening, officer." "Thank God you came by. My truck just died on me, won't turn over at all." I stayed by my door, one hand resting on my weapon. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." His smile faltered slightly. Sure, it's in the truck. Let me just stay where you are, sir. What's your name?" "James. James Thibodeau." He said it without hesitation, without any awareness of the significance of that name. Thibodeau. Marie's name. He was related to her, probably a distant cousin, the grandson of her killer. "Mr. Thibodeau, I need you to keep your hands where I can see them and step away from the truck." "Officer, I'm just trying to—" "Now, sir." Something in my tone must have told him his plan wasn't working. His friendly expression melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating. He took a step toward me, his right hand moving toward his pocket. "I said, keep your hands visible." He pulled out a small spray bottle, the sedative Marie had warned me about. But I was ready. I drew my weapon before he could close the distance. "Drop it! Drop it now." For a moment, we stood there in the glare of my headlights, his hand on the spray bottle, my gun aimed at his chest. I could see him calculating, trying to decide if he was fast enough, if I would really shoot. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice calm, reasonable. "I'm just a guy with a broken-down truck. You're pointing a gun at someone who needs help. I know who you are. I know what you plan to do tonight. And I know about your grandfather." His expression changed completely. The mask fell away, revealing something ugly underneath. You don't know anything. Louis Thibodeau, your grandfather, killed 8 women on Highway 90 between 1951 and 1962, including Marie Thibodeau, a nurse, on September 20th, 1953, right here at mile marker 47. He was never caught, never punished, and you thought you'd continue the family tradition. That's insane. You're crazy. Marie told me everything. She told me you'd be here. She told me your plan. At the mention of Marie's name, something shifted in his face. Fear. That's not possible. Marie is dead, yes, for 51 years. But she's been watching, James, watching and waiting for someone who could stop you. I saw movement in my peripheral vision, the spirits from before moving closer, forming a circle around us. James couldn't see them, but I could feel their presence, their support. Drop the spray bottle and put your hands on your truck. You're under arrest. For what? I haven't done anything, not yet. But you were going to, and even if I can't prove what you plan to do tonight, I know what you've already done. How many have there been, James? How many women have you killed? His silence was answer enough. I called for backup using my cell phone, which suddenly had a signal again. The jammer must have been in his truck, and with me holding him at gunpoint, he couldn't activate it. It took 20 minutes for backup to arrive, the longest 20 minutes of my life, standing there in the darkness, my weapon trained on a serial killer, surrounded by the ghosts of his victims. When Sergeant LeBlanc arrived with 2 other units, I finally lowered my gun. They cuffed James Thibodeau and searched his truck. What they found was damning. Zip ties, rope, plastic sheeting, a shovel, and a duffel bag containing clothing and jewelry from multiple women. Jesus, Landry, LeBlanc said, looking at the evidence. How did you know? Call it intuition. They searched James's property the next day and found 3 bodies buried in the woods behind his house. 3 women who'd disappeared on Highway 90 over the past 2 years. DNA evidence linked him to 2 more murders in adjacent parishes. He was sentenced to life without parole. During the trial, he claimed he was just following his family tradition, that his grandfather had taught him well. The prosecutor used that statement to paint him as a monster, and the jury agreed. I was called a hero, got a commendation, a promotion to detective. But I knew the truth. I wasn't the hero. Marie was. She and all the others who'd guided me those 18 nights. On the night after the trial ended, I drove out to mile marker 47. It was late, well past midnight, and the highway was empty. I got out of my car and stood on the shoulder where I'd first seen Marie 19 days ago. She appeared one more time. Thank you, I said, for everything, for trusting me, for choosing me. Thank you for listening, she replied, for believing. Not everyone would have. Will I see you again? She smiled, and for the first time, she looked at peace. No, my work here is done. We can all rest now. But Bridget, remember this, the dead can't save the living. Only the living can do that. We just pointed the way. You did the saving. All 17 of them. 18, she corrected. You saved yourself, too. That counts most of all. She began to fade, her form becoming translucent in the moonlight. Around us, I could see the other spirits appearing one by one, all the victims of Highway 90, all the lost souls who'd been waiting for justice. One by one, they vanished, moving on to wherever people go when their unfinished business is complete. Marie was the last to go. Goodbye, Bridget Landry. Thank you for being the one who listened. Then she was gone, and I was alone on Highway 90, with nothing but the sound of the bayou and the distant rumble of a truck passing in the night. I got back in my car and drove home. When I arrived, there was a letter waiting for me, delivered by courier. No return address, no name. Inside was a single photograph, old and faded, dated September 1953. It showed a young woman in a nurse's uniform standing beside a car. She was smiling at the camera, full of life and hope. On the back, in elegant cursive, were the words, Marie Thibodeau, age 22, never forgotten. I framed that photograph and kept it on my desk for the rest of my career. A reminder of the 18 nights when the dead reached out to the living, when ghosts pointed the way to justice, and when one woman in a white dress chose to trust me with the truth. Highway 90 is still there, still lonely, still dangerous in places. But mile marker 47 is different now. Locals say it's blessed, that fewer accidents happen there, that it's somehow safer than the rest of the highway. I like to think Marie and the others are still watching, still protecting, making sure no one else suffers what they did. As for me, I spent 15 more years with the Louisiana State Police, eventually retiring as a captain. I investigated hundreds of cases, solved dozens of murders, saved countless lives. But those 18 nights in September 2004 were the most important of my career, because they taught me something fundamental about police work, about justice, about the thin line between the living and the dead. Sometimes the best witnesses are the ones who can't testify in court. Sometimes the most reliable informants are the ones who exist only in memory and moonlight. And sometimes, when you're driving alone on a dark Louisiana highway, the passenger you pick up might just save your life. I never saw Marie Thibodeau again, but on September 20th every year, I drive out to mile marker 47 and leave flowers on the shoulder where she died. White flowers, like her dress. It's the least I can do for the woman who pointed me toward my destiny. And sometimes, on those anniversary nights when the air is thick with humidity and the bayou is singing its ancient songs, I swear I can see her standing there in the darkness. Not pointing anymore, not guiding. Just standing watch over her highway, protecting the people who drive it. A guardian angel in a white dress, forever keeping vigil on Highway 90, making sure no one else becomes a passenger in death's vehicle. That's my story. That's what happened during 18 nights in September 2004, when the dead spoke and the living listened, when ghosts became guides and a serial killer was stopped before he could claim another victim. People ask me sometimes if it really happened, if I really saw ghosts, if the supernatural is real. I tell them what I told the department psychologist, what I told the review board, what I've told everyone who's asked. I tell them that on Highway 90, between New Iberia and Morgan City, there's a stretch of road where the impossible becomes possible, where the boundary between this world and the next grows thin, where the dead can reach back and touch the living, just for a moment, just long enough to change everything. I tell them about mile marker 47, about a woman named Marie, about 18 nights that taught me more about justice than 20 years of police work. And I tell them that if they ever find themselves on that highway late at night, if they see someone standing on the shoulder in a white dress, pointing down the road, they should follow where she leads. Because sometimes the passengers we pick up on life's journey aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they're the ones we need most, appearing exactly when we need them, guiding us toward our purpose. And sometimes, just sometimes, the dead can save the living. If we're brave enough to listen. 3 years after the 18 nights, I thought I'd put it all behind me. I'd made detective, moved to a different parish, focused on cases that dealt strictly with the living. No more night patrols on Highway 90. No more watching the shoulders for figures in white dresses. But the past has a way of finding you, especially when you've been touched by something impossible. It was October 2007 when I got the call. A young trooper named Dwayne Upton had been found unconscious in his patrol car at mile marker 47 on Highway 90. He was alive, but unresponsive, staring straight ahead, his mouth moving like he was trying to speak. The doctors at Lakewood Medical couldn't find anything physically wrong with him, but he wouldn't wake up. When his captain called me, asking if I knew anything about mile marker 47, about strange occurrences on that stretch of highway, I felt my stomach drop. I'd kept my experience quiet, filed it under intuition and good police work in the official reports. But the captain had heard rumors, whispers among the older troopers about Landry and her ghosts. I drove to the hospital that afternoon. Dwayne was in a private room, hooked up to monitors that showed normal vitals, normal brain activity. But his eyes were open, unblinking, staring at something only he could see. I sat beside his bed and took his hand. It was ice cold. "Dwayne, I'm Detective Landry. I know what you saw out there. I know about the passengers. You're not crazy, and you're not alone." His hand twitched in mine. His lips moved, forming silent words. I leaned closer. "What are you trying to say?" "She's still waiting." His voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from disuse, but different now. "Wrong. She's angry." My blood ran cold. "Marie? Marie Thibodeau?" He shook his head slightly. "Not Marie. Someone else. Someone new. She says justice wasn't served. She says you made a mistake." "What mistake?" "I caught the killer. He's in prison." "Not him." "The other one. You missed." "The other one?" Before I could ask what he meant, Dwayne's eyes rolled back and he started seizing. I called for the nurses and they rushed in, stabilizing him. When he finally calmed, he'd slipped into a coma. The doctors said it was a stroke, brought on by unknown causes. But I knew better. Something on Highway 90 had done this to him. Something that wanted me to know I hadn't finished the job. I went back to the old case files that night, spreading them across my dining room table. James Thibodeau's arrest, the trial, the evidence. Everything had been solid. DNA matches, physical evidence, his own confession to 3 murders. He was guilty, no question, but Dwayne had said the other one. What other one? I started looking at the timeline more carefully. James had been active for 2 years before his arrest, killing 3 women we could prove, but there had been other disappearances on Highway 90, stretching back further. 7 women over 5 years, all fitting the same profile. Young, alone, traveling at night. We'd attributed all of them to James, assuming he'd been active longer than we thought. But what if we'd been wrong? What if there had been 2 killers? I spent the next week digging through cold cases, looking for patterns, and I found something that made my skin crawl. 2 of the early disappearances had occurred simultaneously, on the same night, 50 miles apart. James couldn't have killed both of them. There had been a partner, someone working with him or parallel to him, using the same methods. I called the prison and arranged to interview James Thibodeau. He'd been model prisoner, kept to himself, never caused trouble. When they brought him into the interview room, he smiled at me like we were old friends. "Detective Landry, I was wondering when you'd figure it out." There was someone else. Another killer, was there? His smile widened. "Or maybe I was just better at covering my tracks than you thought." "Stop playing games. Who was your partner?" "I worked alone, Detective." "You proved that at trial, remember? 2 women died the same night, 50 miles apart. You couldn't have killed both of them." James leaned back in his chair, still smiling. "Couldn't I? Maybe I'm faster than you think. Maybe I have a twin. Maybe the dead aren't as good at solving crimes as you thought they were." Marie was right about you. She's never been wrong. At the mention of Marie's name, his smile faltered. Marie Thibodeau was my grandfather's victim. Ancient history. She has nothing to do with me. She has everything to do with you. She's the reason you're in here. No, detective. You're the reason I'm in here. You and your ghosts and your supernatural nonsense. But here's the thing about relying on the dead. They only know what they saw when they were dying. They don't see the whole picture. They don't see what happens after. He leaned forward, his eyes glittering with malice. There was someone else out there that night. Someone watching when you arrested me. Someone who learned from my mistakes. And now he's picking up where I left off. Give me a name. Why would I do that? I like knowing that even though I'm in here, the work continues. That women are still dying on Highway 90. That your ghost friends can't stop it because they don't even know who to point you toward. I left the prison with more questions than answers. James had confirmed my suspicions, but he wouldn't give me anything useful. Whoever his partner had been, they were still out there, still hunting. That night, I drove to mile marker 47. I didn't know what I expected to find, but I needed answers, and the only ones who'd ever given me real answers were the dead. The highway was empty, quiet except for the usual bayou sounds. I stood on the shoulder where Marie had first appeared 3 years ago and called out to the darkness. Marie? If you can hear me, I need your help, please. Nothing, just the wind rustling through the sugarcane fields. I tried again. There's another killer. Someone who was working with James. I need to know who it is. I need to stop him before he hurts anyone else. Still nothing. Maybe Marie had moved on completely. Maybe she couldn't come back, even if she wanted to. I was about to give up when I felt it. That familiar coldness in the air, the sense of a presence nearby. But when the figure materialized, it wasn't Marie. It was a young woman, maybe 19, wearing jeans and an LSU hoodie. Her throat had been cut, a ragged wound that leaked spectral blood down her chest. You're looking for answers, she said, her voice wet and gurgling. I can give them to you. But you won't like what you learn. Who are you? Rebecca Cho. I died 6 weeks ago at mile marker 52. He picked me up when my car broke down, said he was a state trooper, showed me a fake badge. I trusted him because he looked official. That was my mistake. He impersonated a trooper. He is a trooper. Or was, retired now. But he still has his uniform, his credentials, still knows how to make people trust him. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. A retired trooper, someone who knew police procedures, who understood how investigations worked, who could stay one step ahead because he knew how we thought. What's his name? I don't know, he never told me. But I can show you where he lives. I've been watching him, like Marie watched the highway, waiting for someone who would listen. Take me to him. Rebecca began walking, and I followed in my car, keeping her ghostly form in my headlights. She led me off Highway 90, down back roads I'd never traveled, deeper into the Bayou country where the old Cajun families lived, where outsiders rarely ventured. After 30 minutes, she stopped in front of a small house on stilts, the kind built to survive floods. A single light burned in the window. He's in there, Rebecca said. His name is on the mailbox. I looked. The name painted on the rusty mailbox made my heart sink. William LeBlanc. Sergeant LeBlanc. The man who'd been first to arrive the night I arrested James Thibodeau. One of the most respected officers in the department, a 30-year veteran who'd trained half the troopers in the parish. No, I whispered, it can't be him. He was there that night, Rebecca said. When you caught James, he saw everything. Heard you talking about ghosts and passengers. That's when he knew he had to be more careful, more selective. He stopped killing for a while, waited for things to calm down. But he couldn't stop completely. It's in his blood, like it was in James's family. How are they connected? William LeBlanc was Louis Thibodeau's friend. They hunted together, killed together. When Louis died, William took a break, raised his family, lived a normal life. But after he retired, he started again. And when he met James, he saw a kindred spirit. He taught James everything he knew. I sat in my car, trying to process this. One of our own. A man I'd worked with, trusted, respected. A serial killer hiding behind a badge for 30 years. How many? I asked, afraid of the answer. I've found 6 of us so far, but there are more. So many more. Decades worth of victims buried in the bayou, their cases never solved, their families never knowing the truth. I looked at the house, at the light burning in the window. William LeBlanc was in there right now, living his quiet retirement, probably planning his next hunt. Not anymore. I called for backup, but not from the local department. I went straight to the state police headquarters, to people who didn't know LeBlanc, who wouldn't be compromised by friendship or loyalty. I told them everything, about James, about the pattern, about Rebecca's murder. I didn't mention the ghosts. I'd learned that lesson. They raided LeBlanc's house at dawn. What they found was a trophy room hidden in the basement. Driver's licenses, jewelry, photographs, evidence of at least 23 murders spanning 40 years. William LeBlanc was arrested without incident. He was 84 years old, had grandchildren, was beloved in his community, and he'd been a monster for most of his life. During his interrogation, he never showed remorse. He talked about the killings like they were hunting trips, casual entertainment. He confirmed that he'd trained James Thibodeau, that they'd killed together on several occasions. That night, Landry arrested James. He told investigators. She was talking to herself in the dark, talking to people who weren't there. I knew then she was touched, that she could see things. I almost killed her that night, but there were too many officers around. So I waited, planned. But she never came back to Highway 90, not alone. Lucky for her. The trial made national news. A decorated officer, a serial killer hiding in plain sight for 40 years. 23 confirmed victims, possibly more. The Louisiana State Police underwent a complete review of unsolved cases going back to the 1960s. Dwayne Upton woke up from his coma the day after LeBlanc's arrest. He couldn't remember anything about his time at mile marker 47, but he recovered fully. He transferred to a different parish, never worked Highway 90 again. As for me, I went back to mile marker 47 one final time. It was late at night, a year after LeBlanc's conviction, and I needed to know if it was truly over. Marie appeared, but she wasn't alone. Rebecca was with her, and dozens of others. All the victims, both James's and LeBlanc's, standing together on the shoulder of Highway 90. "It's done," Marie said. "Justice has been served. We can rest now." "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner," I told them. "I'm sorry you had to wait so long." "You saw it when you were meant to see it," Marie replied. "When Dwayne was ready to show you. The dead can point the way, but the living have to walk the path. You walked it perfectly. One by one, the spirits began to fade, their purposes fulfilled, their stories complete. Rebecca was among the last to go. "Thank you," she said, "for listening, for believing, for not giving up." Then she was gone, and I was alone on the highway once more. But not quite alone, because standing in the darkness, just beyond the glow of my headlights, I saw one more figure. A young trooper, maybe 25, in a uniform from the 1970s. He raised his arm and pointed down the highway. I understood then it would never truly be over. Highway 90 would always have its ghosts, its victims, its stories waiting to be told. And as long as people traveled these roads, as long as predators hunted in the darkness, there would be passengers pointing the way toward justice. I got in my car and followed where he led, because that's what I do. That's what I'll always do. I'm the one who listens to the passengers. And on Highway 90, in the deep bayou country of Louisiana, the passengers never stop pointing. 20 years after the 18 nights, I returned to Highway 90 for the last time. I was 52 years old, retired from the Louisiana State Police with full honors, living a quiet life in Baton Rouge. My daughter was grown, married, giving me grandchildren. I'd written a book about my cases, carefully editing out the parts about ghosts and passengers, focusing instead on the detective work, the evidence, the convictions. But I never forgot. How could I? The call came from a young detective named Amanda Ross. She was investigating a cold case from 1989, a disappearance on Highway 90 that had never been solved. She'd heard the rumors about me, about my connection to the highway, and she needed my help. The victim's sister came forward with new information, Amanda explained over the phone. She says her sister talked about seeing a woman in white before she disappeared. A woman who appeared on the highway, pointing at things. My hand tightened on the phone. What was the victim's name? Catherine Broussard, age 28, last seen at a gas station near mile marker 45. That was 35 years ago. I'll come, I said. Give me the address. We met at a diner in New Iberia. Amanda was sharp, maybe 30 years old, with intelligent eyes that reminded me of myself at that age. She had the case file spread across the table, photographs and reports yellowed with age. Catherine Broussard was driving to her sister's house in Morgan City, Amanda began. She called from the gas station at 9 p.m., said she'd be there by 9:30. She never arrived. Her car was found 3 days later, abandoned at mile marker 47, keys in the ignition, no sign of Catherine. Mile marker 47. Of course it was. The sister, Nicole, says Catherine mentioned seeing a woman in a white dress earlier that week. The woman appeared at night, standing on the shoulder, pointing. Catherine thought she was lost, tried to help her, but the woman just disappeared. Did Nicole see her too? No, just Catherine. Nicole thought her sister was stressed, imagining things. But after Catherine disappeared, Nicole started researching Highway 90. She found other reports, other sightings of a woman in white, including references to a Detective Landry, who allegedly solved a murder case in 2004 with help from ghosts. Amanda looked at me expectantly, waiting to see if I'd deny it, laugh it off, confirm her worst fears that she was wasting her time on supernatural nonsense. Instead, I told her the truth, all of it. The 18 nights, Marie Thibodeau, the passengers pointing the way, James and William LeBlanc, the pattern of killings going back decades. I told her everything I'd left out of my official reports, everything I'd never shared with anyone except the department psychologist. When I finished, Amanda was quiet for a long time. "I believe you," she finally said. "I know how that sounds, but I believe you. Because 3 weeks ago, I saw her, the woman in white. I was driving home late, passing mile marker 47, and there she was, standing on the shoulder, pointing at me. What did you do?" I pulled over, got out, asked if she needed help. She just kept pointing, so I followed the direction she indicated. Found a car that had gone off the road, hidden in the tall grass. Inside was a man, unconscious, diabetic, going into shock. I called for help, got him to a hospital. He survived. And the woman? Gone. like she was never there. But Detective Landry, Bridget, I think she's still doing it. Still pointing people toward emergencies, toward situations where lives can be saved. Or toward unfinished business, I said quietly. Catherine Broussard. Her case was never solved. Maybe Marie is trying to lead us there. Will you come with me? To mile marker 47, tonight? I should have said no. I was retired, done with all of this, ready to live a normal life without ghosts and impossible choices. But Amanda's eyes held the same determination I'd seen in my own mirror 20 years ago. Okay, I said, but we do this my way. And you have to be prepared for what you might see. That night, we drove to mile marker 47. The highway looked different now, wider, better maintained, but the darkness was the same, and the bayou still sang its ancient songs beyond the road's edge. We parked on the shoulder and waited. Amanda checked her watch every few minutes, nervous energy radiating from her. I sat calmly, knowing that ghosts appeared on their own schedule, not ours. At 11:47 p.m., the exact time Marie had died in 1953, she appeared. The woman in white, materializing from the darkness like she'd done so many times before. But something was different. She looked older than I remembered, worn, like the decades had taken their toll even in death. Bridget Landry, Marie said, her voice weaker than before. You came back. I promised I would, if you ever needed me. There's one more. One final passenger who needs justice. Catherine Broussard. She saw me, she tried to help, and because of that, she died. What happened to her? William LeBlanc. She saw me pointing toward where he'd buried one of his earlier victims. She didn't understand what she was seeing, but she started asking questions, looking around the area. LeBlanc found out. He couldn't let her discover the grave, so he took her. Where? Marie raised her arm and pointed, not down the highway this time, but toward the bayou. Out there. In the deep water, weighted down. She's been there for 35 years, and her sister needs to know. Needs to bury her properly. Amanda spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. Can you show us exactly where? Marie looked at her, and for the first time in all my encounters with the dead, I saw something like hope in a ghost's eyes. You can see me, hear me. You're like Bridget. I don't know what I am, Amanda admitted, but I want to help. I want to bring Catherine home to her family. Marie smiled. Then follow me. She began walking toward the bayou, her white dress glowing faintly in the darkness. Amanda and I followed, using our flashlights to navigate the rough ground. The bayou loomed before us, dark water reflecting starlight. Cypress trees draped in Spanish moss creating an otherworldly canopy. Marie stopped at the water's edge and pointed to a spot about 30 feet out, where the water was deepest. There, she said, weighted with chains and concrete. LeBlanc made sure she'd never surface. Amanda made notes, marking GPS coordinates. We'll need a dive team, proper equipment. But we'll find her, I promise. Thank you, Marie said. Then she turned to me. Bridget, I need to ask something of you. Anything. Stop. Stop listening to the passengers. Stop following where we point. You've done enough, more than enough. It's time to let the living solve the living's problems. But what about others who need help? What about there will always be emergencies, always be people in danger, but you can't save everyone. You've spent 20 years following ghosts and it's taken years off your life. I can see it in you, the weight of carrying our stories, our pain, our need for justice. It's killing you slowly. I wanted to argue, but I knew she was right. I'd had nightmares for 2 decades. Insomnia. A failed marriage partly because I couldn't explain where I went on those long night drives, who I was talking to when I stood alone on empty highways. "What about you?" I asked. "What happens to you if I stop listening?" I fade. We all do eventually. Our time here is borrowed, sustained by the need for justice. But Catherine was the last victim who died because of what I tried to show someone. With her found, with her family finally knowing the truth, I can rest. And the others? The passengers who aren't connected to you? They'll find someone else. Someone like Amanda, young and open to possibilities. The highway will always have its listeners. But it doesn't need to be you anymore. Amanda put her hand on my shoulder. "She's right, Bridget. I can take it from here. I'll listen. I'll follow where they point. But you've earned your rest." I looked at Marie, at the ghost who'd changed my life 20 years ago, who'd trusted me with impossible knowledge and sacred responsibility. She'd been my guide, my teacher, my reminder that justice sometimes requires seeing beyond the visible world. "Thank you," I said, "for choosing me, for showing me that the world is bigger and stranger than I ever imagined." "Thank you for listening," Marie replied, "for believing when no one else would, for never looking away." She began to fade, her form becoming translucent. But before she disappeared completely, she spoke one last time. "Bridget Landry, you were the best listener the highway ever had. The passengers will remember you. And when your time comes, when you cross over yourself, we'll be waiting to thank you properly." Then she was gone, and the bayou was just a bayou, the highway, just a highway, the darkness, just the absence of light. Amanda and I stood there in silence for a long moment. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "Yeah," I said, and realized I meant it. "Yeah, I think I am." We drove back to town, and Amanda began the process of organizing the dive team, getting the permits, doing the work of bringing Catherine Broussard home. 3 weeks later, they found her exactly where Marie had pointed. Catherine's remains were recovered, identified through dental records, and finally laid to rest beside her parents in the family cemetery. Nicole Broussard came to see me after the funeral. She was in her 60s now, had spent 35 years wondering what happened to her sister. "Thank you," she said, tears streaming down her face, "for never giving up, for finding her. I had help," I told her. "More help than you could imagine." I never went back to Highway 90 after that night. Gave my old patrol routes a wide berth, avoided the stretches of highway where I'd encountered the passengers. It wasn't that I didn't care anymore. I cared too much. But Marie had been right. I'd carried that weight long enough. Amanda took over, becoming the highway's new listener. She called me sometimes, telling me about the passengers she'd encountered, the emergencies she'd prevented, the justice she'd served. She was good at it, maybe better than I'd been. Younger, fresher, not yet worn down by the accumulation of other people's deaths. I lived quietly, spent time with my grandchildren, wrote another book about cold cases. Normal detective work, nothing supernatural. My daughter noticed the change in me, said I seemed lighter, younger somehow. "You finally let it go," she said one day. "Whatever was weighing on you all those years, you let it go." "Yeah," I agreed. "I let it go." But that wasn't entirely true. You don't forget 18 nights of riding with ghosts. You don't forget the woman in the white dress who trusted you with the truth. You don't forget the lives saved, the justice served, the impossible made real. I kept Marie's photograph on my desk, the one she'd sent me after the trial. Kept it there as a reminder of when the dead spoke and the living listened, when Highway 90 became something more than asphalt and painted lines. 5 years after my last encounter with Marie, I had a heart attack. not severe, but enough to remind me that time was finite, that even listeners eventually become the listened for. As I lay in the hospital bed, drifting in and out of consciousness, I saw them, all of them. Marie and Rebecca, Catherine, and all the others whose stories I'd helped complete. They stood around my bed like visitors, like old friends checking on someone they cared about. "Not yet," Marie said, smiling. "You still have time, but we'll be here when you're ready. We'll be waiting." When I woke up fully, they were gone. The doctors said I'd been hallucinating, side effects from the medication. But I knew better. I recovered, went home, lived another 10 years. Good years, peaceful years. Years where I didn't follow ghosts or stand on dark highways waiting for the dead to point the way. But I never stopped believing. Never stopped knowing that somewhere out there, on Highway 90, in the deep bayou country of Louisiana, the passengers still appeared. Still pointed toward emergencies, toward justice, toward the truth that the living couldn't see on their own. And somewhere, someone was listening. Because that's how it works. The dead need witnesses, and the living need guides. The highway needs its listeners, and the passengers need their stories told. I was lucky enough to be chosen for that role, for 18 nights and 20 years beyond. Lucky enough to see beyond the veil, to understand that justice doesn't end with death, that some debts can only be paid across the boundary between worlds. Now I'm 72 years old, sitting on my porch in Baton Rouge, watching the sunset over the Mississippi. My grandchildren play in the yard, their laughter rising like music in the humid air. It's a good life, a normal life, the kind of life I'd always wanted. But sometimes, on quiet evenings when the air grows thick and the darkness presses close, I think about Highway 90, about mile marker 47, about a woman in a white dress who pointed the way toward my destiny. And I smile because I know the truth. The passengers never stop pointing. The listeners never stop listening. And somewhere between the living and the dead, on a lonely stretch of Louisiana highway, justice is still being served, one pointing finger at a time. That's my story. That's my truth. I'm Bridget Landry, and I was the one who listened to the passengers, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat.